on the future for ASU, sometimes we gotta look at like the past, and we had the 50th anniversary, and we saw like all these like famous figures of ASU and like the stuff they've done and accomplishments. But unfortunately for us, we don't really know that history or know what they've done. And a lot of stuff I've seen at Tech in general is that a lot of stuff we try to implement, they have already done or can give advice on it. So how do you want to work with, as me in the face of ASU, work with like GT Bear or the Black alumni to get their advice, to get their wisdom and resource to help ASU out for the future?
I can take that question. So I didn't mention this in my platform, but part of leveraging our alumni base is my plan to start a semesterly newsletter to our alumni and corporate sponsors. That way they can feel a little bit more integrated into what we do now. That was one of the big criticisms that I heard as I was reaching out to alumni for the 50th anniversary gala, is that they felt so disconnected from what was going on. So I saw that as an issue, and that's something that I'm working to try to improve. And then also through the mentoring program with current students and alumni, they have that opportunity to work directly with our student and our membership base. That's something that I'm really excited about and that I would love to see implemented even if I don't become president, just because it's so important to make sure that you know your history. That's something that I really had to work on for the gala. There was so much that hasn't been documented, hasn't been recorded, but making sure that we bring all that information to the membership because it's very important to know.
Yeah, so this last year, it's given the e-board and the general body a good chance to kind of get a baseline understanding of where ASU comes from and where we're going. I feel like the history that we've kind of learned over this year is something that kind of needs to be repeated and kind of ingrained into the e-board specifically in the coming terms. So kind of, there used to be a history kind of presentation given to the general body, but I feel like at the beginning of the term for the e-board, we should make sure that we're understanding where ASU comes from, the pitfalls, the peaks and things like that, to make sure that we don't kind of repeat some of the same problems, but that we are able to implement or replicate some of the things that made them succeed. So I feel like that's one key, and then also strengthening the relationship we have with the alumni. I think sometimes when you leave Tech, it's so crazy being here that sometimes it's easy for us to kind of let everyone else fall through the cracks. So we have to make sure that there's the office in the BSO that we don't really reach out to. There are people that come in that we kind of just like see on the side but don't really talk to. So kind of encouraging a coalition essentially with them as well to make sure we strengthen it so we can pull our resources together and be the best ASU we can be.
One of the things that I really valued about ASU was the potential for the organization to be not only creative but also innovative. So as a president of the organization and being outward facing as well as making sure that you maintain the e-board and also just the general body, what are ways that you see that your position can be used to make ASU more innovative and also more creative?
That's a very broad question, but I feel like kind of just making sure that you're implementing and that you're hearing fresh ideas essentially would be the easiest way or the most efficient way, I think, to make sure that you're consistently growing and changing. So for example, like when I came into membership chair, I kind of saw some of the things that the previous membership chairs were doing that I liked and the things that I didn't like. So instead of kind of being like, oh, I'm just going to keep this formula going, I decided to change the way I do things, add some more engaging aspects just so people felt like they were getting a new type of meeting and it wasn't just the same regular ASU meetings. So with that in mind, kind of making sure that everyone's voices on the e-board are heard as well as the general body, taking in any ideas and being willing to hear them and implement them, and kind of making sure that we're always trying something new and we're not shying away from something that might be a little different just because previous boards or previous versions of the organization didn't do it, just to make sure that we're still staying on top of what's current, what's fresh and new, and like you said, innovative.
I think that was a really good question. An idea that I have for making sure that we're always bringing new ideas to the organization is just by collaborating. By reaching out to different organizations, you get a different perspective, and they also bring their membership with a different perspective. I can kind of think back to an ASU event that I went to with the Asian American Student Association, and that was something I hadn't really seen, is like other minority organizations kind of doing a collaborative event. And I'd like to see more of that within ASU because we have over 500 organizations on campus. There's so many different facets of campus that we don't reach and so much information that we could bring to them and that they could give to us.
That concludes our time. Does anybody move to extend time for questions? Any final questions?
Do I need to motion to extend time? Okay, I motion to extend time for questioning by 3 minutes.
Does anybody have another question? Yes.
Yes. Both of you in your speeches talked about the importance of making sure that ASU is well connected and collaborative in the BSO, in the larger Georgia Tech community, and in the Atlanta area. So can each of you describe what you feel ASU's role in each of those segments is in the BSO, at Georgia Tech, and then in Atlanta?
Okay, so as in the BSO to start, we're kind of a cultural and social outlet for students at Georgia Tech, Black students specifically. I think we're one of the only organizations in the BSO that doesn't really have like a niche that you kind of don't feel like you need to belong to a certain community to kind of be able to enjoy what ASU can provide for you. I think kind of like our fundamental responsibility says, we're here to be the voice of the African American students in Georgia Tech. We cover a range of topics from, more social things, more political things and things like that, to make sure that you feel like you're getting a strong Black cultural experience even at this PWI. In the Georgia Tech community, it's a similar kind of take on it, and where we want to make sure that the Black students at Georgia Tech are represented. So that kind of is where we come into play, where we're putting our place and our presence in things that are like bigger campus events, and just making sure that people understand what ASU does, not only for the Black students, but for Georgia Tech, and what we can bring into it. And then the greater Atlanta community, being Georgia Tech students, we have a lot of resources that not only the schools around us don't necessarily have, but also just the communities in general. So it's kind of our responsibility to be able to try to lend these tools, these resources, these abilities to them to help bring up everyone, because what happens in Atlanta will affect us regardless. So who the mayor is, who the governor is, and things like that, what's going on in the immediate community around us, places like North Avenue and things like that, will affect the way that we exist here at Georgia Tech. So just making sure that we're making our presence known and that we're lending as much as we can in positions such as social chairs, community outreach, and just making sure we're making our presence seen and heard.
I think Nani did a really great job answering that question. What I would add to that is within the BSO, I see ASU as a family. The purpose is to help people integrate into a culture and a space that doesn't really look like us, and provide resources, whatever you need. I kind of talked about that a little bit in my platform, but I see ASU as a wealth of knowledge. We have all the resources as far as how to succeed academically, how to find jobs, how to take care of your mental health. So I think it's very important that ASU is bringing that knowledge to our general membership. And then for the Institute, it's our job to advocate for what Black students need. We've seen that over the years through the establishment of OMED, and just a number of other initiatives. So I think that's important that we stay true to that. It's our job to make the important decisions and speak on behalf for what our community really needs. And then in the greater Atlanta community, we're really at a point of privilege being Black and college educated at one of the best schools in the world. So it's just very important that we give back to the world around us, because if there wasn't for people giving back to us, I don't know, I can't speak for everyone else, but I know that I wouldn't be here at Georgia Tech. So it's important to extend that same level of care for other people, and help make sure that we're bringing up the world around us.
Anybody motion to extend the time?
I mean,
How much?
4 minutes. 6 minutes.
Okay. Does anybody second that motion?
I second.
Okay, there we go.
One of the pillars that I feel as though has not been emphasized enough is scholarship. So is there any way for ASU to really help the Black community in terms of uplifting the GPA, and also helping us make sure that we graduate as well, or integrate as well.
I can talk a lot about that. Some of my action items that I kind of came up with that aligned with my platform is one, making sure that we're working closely with like OMED and LDR to help freshmen kind of immerse to the culture at Georgia Tech, and that really includes making sure that you're staying on top of your studies. And then two, this is related, but kind of not really. So one thing that I want to do to kind of develop our membership is provide access to like different courses, but exclusively for our membership. And that includes academic advising, academic coaching. They have that in Clough, but I would like to see like an ASU event completely focused around that, where students can come in and get academic coaching, and that really helps with like learning how to study, helping create a study schedule, and really being efficient with your use of time and managing your academics.
I feel like scholarship is kind of a hard pillar to tackle, just because a lot of times there's a stigma of like not really talking about your grades, especially if they're not necessarily to a certain standard that you might expect. So I feel like the best thing that we could do as an organization that goes back to the point of collaboration. So it's one thing to like host an ASU study hall, but if we, like you said, collaborate with like the offices in the Colk, or like different schools, academic advisors and things like that, to kind of host an event where the general body feels like ASU cares about their academics, and we're not just like, oh, come to the social event, come to the meetings, and that's really it. But we want to make sure that you're succeeding in all aspects of your Georgia Tech career. Also going back to, like she said, working with OMED and working with their tutors, and just making sure that people like Jared are aware of the needs that we need. So being an EDGE leader for the last 2 years, I've been able to kind of foster a relationship with most of the faculty in OMED, as well as the first-year students coming in from GC21 and GC22. So I've been able to begin to kind of start conversations of what these students need academically, etc. So our workshops, I understand kind of like what they want past OMED, because after your first year, there's really no programs or nothing to really help you. So to kind of work as an extension of OMED, extension of the EDGE program specifically, and where we kind of keep making sure that we're having events, having mentors even within the e-board, within the general body, that are reaching out. So not only the first years, but the transfers, the second years, etc. Anybody who really needs the help, to make sure that everyone feels comfortable knowing where to go for help and kind of expressing that need in the community.
Going off what Austin question said, so like, we know ASU represents the Black community at Tech, but like Blackness has the floor of like different identities and like representation, also influenced by your background and like stuff like race and like sexuality and things like that. I know from perception for people outside that they don't feel that ASU may represent them or their Blackness. And during my time here at Tech, I've had friends of people who felt like being in the Black community, they feel like they're Black and not represented, but they feel uncomfortable. And if we do say that we do represent the Black community at Tech, what will you do to help make people with Blackness feel included and validated in the community and make them feel acceptable? Because some people don't want to be always engaged in the BSO and do things outside, or want to have diverse mindsets to make sure that they feel comfortable, feel okay engaging in ASU the way they want to, and that their Blackness is validated.
So before I became membership chair, I kind of talked to some of the people you're referring to who didn't really feel comfortable in the meetings first and foremost, just because that's the first connection to ASU that a lot of people have. So during my term, I made it a point to kind of not only cover a variety of topics, but make sure that my topics could be as inclusive as possible, that they weren't really only catered to a certain person. So even during our election-based meeting, we weren't really saying either way, like what you should vote for, what kind of mindset you should even necessarily have in that political sense, but we just want to make people aware of what's going on. So things like that, and also collaborating with like the LGBTQI Resource Center, the Women's Resource Center. In the spring, when I collaborated with ASA, that kind of brought a different kind of community into our general body meetings that people hadn't really seen previously. And so just kind of reaching out to these, because there are places for these communities, but we have to make sure that we can come together essentially. Like I said, there's the LGBTQIs, there's the other cultural BSOs, and we just have to make sure that ASU is kind of the center, or that we're like the home that everyone can feel that they can come to and collaborate with us without it kind of being a stigma, or that they feel uncomfortable being around us, and that the general body is kind of an environment for inclusiveness, unity, and collectiveness, kind of how I mentioned in my speech.
I think that was a really good question. Just to add to what Nandi was saying, it's very important that we make our programming something that's applicable to everyone. So one thing that I want to kind of do, I know we used to do this, but I haven't really seen it in a while, is like using membership, like using general body meetings to kind of have like sessions on topics that transcend what you might feel Blackness is to you. So, for example, like having boys come in to do topics on like sexual assault, topics on like doing QPR training with our membership, and also just like really collaborating with other organizations in the BSO, because even though we're the African American Student Union, our membership is so much more than that, having like international students, people that don't identify as African American, and we want to make sure that it's a home for everyone, just through our like programming, and making sure that it's something that's applicable to like everyone within the community. And then also it's really on the executive board.
Time. I motion to extend the time by 1 minute.
Okay. So also it's really it's really on the executive board to kind of reach out to people that feel like they're uncomfortable, just making that first step to say, oh, come sit by me in the meeting, oh, you should move up to the front, let's talk, let's meet outside of a meeting. So I think it's really an additional role that an e-board member needs to take on to make sure that everyone can feel like ASU is home.
Okay. Are there any final questions? All right, perfect. All right, thank you everyone for coming out to this year's elections. Again, this election is for your presidential candidate or your president for spring 2019, fall 2019, and spring 2020. So that's 3 semesters. Voting is available on OrgSync. The link will go out on like the Twitter very soon. But beyond that, it is on the website under the elections page and on the home page, and you can